All right, if you're tackling Indigo by Lewis Fisher for your Class 12 exams, you are in exactly the right place. We're not just going to skim the story. Oh, no. We are going to crack open how to answer those tricky why and how questions, the ones that really separate the good scores from the great ones. So let's dive right in. So here's our game plan. We've got 5 key stops. First, we'll look at the determined peasant who got this whole thing started. Then we're going to dissect Gandhi's huge conflict of duties. After that, we'll figure out why a tiny 25% refund was actually a massive win, and then unpack the super important lesson on self-reliance. And to wrap it all up, I've got a topper's tip to help you build that perfect answer. Let's get to it. Okay, first up, the resolute peasant's plea. Look, if you really want to analyze the Champaran movement, you have to go back to the very beginning. This wasn't some grand organized plan. It all started because of one man's incredible, unwavering persistence.
And this is the guy Raj Kumar Shukla. The text describes him as poor and emaciated, thin and weak. But don't let that description fool you. His most important quality was his tenacity. He was just an ordinary farmer, but he became this extraordinary spark for one of the biggest moments in India's struggle for freedom.
The absolute perfect word to describe Shukla is resolute. It means you're determined, you're unwavering, you have a purpose. Think about it. This man followed Gandhi for weeks, all across the country, basically camping out wherever he went, until Gandhi finally agreed to come to Champaran. That right there is the definition of being resolute. So what was his big problem? Why was Shukla so desperate? Well, the whole system was incredibly unfair. The peasants were forced to grow indigo on the best part of their land and then hand over the entire harvest as rent to the British landlords. But then the real kicker, Germany invents synthetic indigo. Suddenly, the natural crop is worthless, so the landlords, being so generous, offered to let the peasants out of the deal if they paid a huge fee. It was pure extortion.
So, Gandhi arrives in Champaran to look into this exact problem, and right away we get to our first major analytical point. And trust me, this is a classic exam question. His conflict of duties. This is the moment where he basically sets the stage for civil disobedience in India. The second Gandhi starts asking questions, the British authorities get really nervous. They see him as a major troublemaker, and bam, they slap him with an official notice from the police, ordering him to leave Champaran immediately.
Now, they totally expected him to just pack his bags and leave. He was a lawyer, right? A guy who, in theory, respected the law. So what did he do?
He took the notice, he signed for it, and then he wrote back a simple, incredibly powerful reply. I shall disobey this order. That one move, peacefully refusing to obey a law he knew was unjust, was a total game changer. It was the first real act of civil disobedience in modern India. Now, you really have to appreciate the internal struggle going on here. On one hand, he's got this duty to the law. He doesn't want to be seen as a lawbreaker. But on the other hand, he felt this much, much higher duty, what he called the voice of conscience, his duty to help the suffering peasants he came for. In the end, he chose humanity over an unjust rule. And guess what? His defiance worked. The government saw how much support he had from the peasants, and they totally backed down. And that leads us to our next critical point, the 25% victory of prestige. This is where you have to think like a topper and see beyond the obvious. So yeah, because Gandhi stood his ground, the government had no choice but to form an official inquiry. And, surprise, surprise, the evidence was overwhelming. The landlords were found guilty of cheating the peasants. Okay, now here's the part that trips a lot of people up. The commission asks the landlords how much they should pay back. Gandhi, surprisingly, only asks for half. The landlords, trying to call his bluff, offer a measly 25%. And to everyone's shock, Gandhi accepts it. He just says, okay. Why? Why on earth was that a victory? Because, and this is the absolute key, it was never about the money. The money was secondary. The real victory was forcing the powerful British landlords to return anything at all. It was a surrender, not of cash, but of their prestige, their whole attitude of being untouchable. Think about the psychological impact. For the first time ever, these landlords were humbled. Their feeling of being above the law was shattered, and most importantly, the peasants saw it happen. They learned that they had rights, that they had people who would defend them. They gained courage. The real battle wasn't about the money. It was about breaking that cycle of fear. And speaking of that battle against fear, that brings us perfectly to our final core theme, the lesson in self-reliance. You see, Gandhi wasn't just there to fix one problem. He was teaching a lesson that would become the foundation of the entire independence movement. So picture this. The Champaran struggle is winding down, and Gandhi's lawyer friends have what they think is a brilliant idea. Charles Freer Andrews, this well-known English pacifist who was a huge supporter of Gandhi, was in town. The lawyers thought, hey, let's get him to stay and help us. On the surface, it seems like a no-brainer, right? You're fighting against the British landlords. Having a sympathetic Englishman on your side seems like a smart move. But Gandhi? He was strongly against it. Why would he turn down help from a friend? Because for Gandhi, this was a crucial teaching moment. He told the lawyers that looking for an Englishman to be their savior showed a weakness of our heart. He said the cause was just and they had to win the battle by themselves. This was the whole point. True independence couldn't be gifted. It had to be built on a foundation of self-reliance. Okay, so we've broken down the why and the how of all these key moments. Now for the really practical part. How do you take all this analysis and turn it into a high-scoring answer in your exam? This, my friends, is your topper's tip. Seriously, for any long answer question on Indigo, just use this simple 4-step playbook. Step 1, start with a short, sharp intro to set the scene. Step 2, hit them with your first point, let's say the conflict of duties, and back it up with evidence, like Gandhi disobeying the order. Step 3, do it again with your second point, like the victory of prestige, using the 25% refund as your proof. And step 4, bring it all home. Summarize your points and connect them to a bigger idea, like self-reliance. This shows you're not just repeating facts, you're actually analyzing. And as you're writing, always remember this core idea, something Gandhi himself said. The goal wasn't just about land or money. The real relief, the ultimate win, was for the peasants to finally be free from the fear that had controlled their lives. That, right there, is the heart of the Champaran story. So I'll leave you with one final question to really chew on. How did everything that happened in Champaran, the civil disobedience, the focus on fighting fear, the lesson of self-reliance, serve as a direct blueprint for India's much larger freedom struggle? If you can answer that, you're ready for anything. Thanks for joining this explainer.